Okay, everyone, welcome back to the session. We'll wait for one more minute and we'll get started. So just one more minute, we'll get started. So, okay, everyone, again, welcome back to the session. So this is Naresh. So we can continue with our session, but before we continue, just confirm that if all of you are able to hear me, so we can just continue clear. Are you guys able to hear me now? Everybody, say yes if you're all good. Raghavendra and Sachin. Just started. Okay, great. Okay, so great, guys. I hope you all joined from the app, I believe today. So just to make it clear, maybe, we can talk again at the end of the session. So just for a quick recap, team, yesterday we have completed, we try to understand what exactly is Git, what is version control system, and why do we need version control system, or how a developer able to save the source code into a version control system tool, such as GitHub or a source code management tool. That's developers duty to maintain the source code and its versions. We never worry about it, but this is how it is, right? Once the source code is available on the GitHub, right, or as kind of a source code management tool, we take that source code. Our target is now to deliver this into the customer hands. So in order to deliver that, there are processes involved in it. So we have to convert the source code, right? We have to convert the source code into an executable format so that that can be deployed or that can be installed onto a server. Like you install a VLC media player on your Windows machine, we need to convert the source code into an executable format that can be deployed or installed onto a server. Once it is installed on a server, we can start using it. So in order to do that, one team, yesterday we discussed about Jenkins also. Using Jenkins Maven as a build tool, Maven will help us build the code or convert the source code into executable format. But along with that, we also wanted to do the automation because build process is a big process. We want to automate the stuff. So we used Jenkins to automate the entire process of building the code into various steps like compilation, whatever is on my screen, compilation to package, and all these pipeline or these steps are called as continuous integration pipeline, right? These steps are involved. Why do we call it as a continuous integration? Is that because we repeat the same process multiple times in a day, like based on the number of commits you get it, you're going to repeat the same process again and again. We want to automate this stuff, so that is the reason we call this continuous integration, continuously integrating all the source code into a single bundle, and we want to deliver that into the next environments. This is a quick recap of what we did yesterday. So just to be clear, and yesterday team, as part of the CI pipeline that we built it, we saw that the output or outcome, the final output is that the package, nothing but the var file or an executable file that we got it. Since we are dealing with the Java application here, we are getting an extension called as .var, web archive we call it. Now that archive file team, that is not the executable file, can be installed onto the next session, right? Can be installed onto the can be installed onto the various environments. That is what we see it. Okay, so in your organization team, we have something called as the development environment or a QA environment or pre-prod or production. There could be various environments in your organization. Now our duty is to deliver this application into various environments, right? Means that we use the various environments for various purposes team, like QA environment is used for quality test or functional testing like that, and pre-production is also for some kind of testing. Means that before we deliver our application into the end user hand or a customer, basically we want to thoroughly test it. That is the reason we have all the environments. And finally the production is the environment where your end user will be using that application. So we need to deliver, our target is to deliver the application into a production environment, right? So we need to understand how do we deliver this. Means that we want to deploy this application or install this particular war file that we got it into various environments, right? This is what it is. So here it is. Let's say that the development environment, I want to deploy the war file and then deliver into this one or this. In order to deliver this environment application team, first of all, if I want to deploy the application war file, that has some dependencies such that there is a machine. Like if you want to install VLC media player, you have to have operating system and necessary things accordingly on your system, right? So similar to this one team, in order to deploy these war files or Java applications, right, there should be kind of an operating system. Every machine should have an operating system, basically, that is must be there. And on top of it, you normally need, because it's a Java based application, we need Java to be installed. And once final there, in order to deploy that one, we need kind of a tool that runs this application, that is nothing but your web servers. Let's say that Tomcat is a web server that I want to use it. And once you have this environment team, assume that this is the environment that should be pre-set up before you deploy your application, right? So in order to run my application, I need these dependencies. So I must have to install these set of tools in across all the environments and across all the servers, whatever you have it. Now this is what is a prerequisite before you run your application. Once you have this environments ready team, once you have these setup is ready on your servers across different environments, then we simply take this war file, right? This war file will be taken here and deployed here. So we test that if it is working or not. Similarly, we take it here. We'll test if it is working or not. If it is thoroughly tested, we are good. We certify the application. We deliver into the pre-production. And finally, our target is to deliver the application into the production. This is what is the target team. That is how we need to do it. Now here, how do I deliver this? We're gonna understand it, various ways to do it. First of all, before that one team, before we deploy our application, as I said, like we want to have these environments set up with the Java installed, Tomcat installed, or whatever the dependencies to run your application need to be installed on this particular service. Now consider this team, like there are different environments, means that there are n number of servers will be there. Like development may have couple of servers, or QA may have couple of servers, just to maintain the high availability of the application, or to test widely, we maintain that number of servers to be deployed, right? Similarly, the production, consider that the production is also having n number of servers. Means that team, we never install application in a single server, because it is a single point of failure. Becomes if server crashed, then application will not be accessible. In order to make the application accessible, we actually install the application across a number of servers based on the application usage. Let's say that if you go for facebook.com is used by millions of users. So in order to maintain the availability, means whenever you access the application, it should be available to you. In order to maintain that availability of the application, Facebook application might have deployed into hundreds of servers in the backend, right? So this is where whenever one server goes down, also application will be served from the other server automatically. That is the purpose, or maintain the high availability. So when we talk about setting up these environments team, we talk about a number of servers. Now the question is that how do I set up my environment is the question. Means that here, if I give you a single server team and if I ask you to install Java and Tomcat, good, you will take 1 or 2 minutes simply, or let's say that you take maximum of 15 to 20 minutes to set up the things. Done. Once that is done, you can simply deploy the application. But how about I want to set up this same Tomcat and then Java across 500 servers in my production? Now how do I do that, right? Now that is, think about a large scale team in your organization. There could be thousands of servers where you want to maintain the configurations. When I say configuration team, the configuration can be anything. So here team, why I am discussing about this is that basically we are going to discuss a tool now called as configuration management tool, right? We are going to discuss a tool called as configuration management tool, which is now we're going to discuss about a tool called as Ansible, right? Ansible is called as a configuration management tool, which helps us make changes, right? Change team. Think about a change basically. This is what we're talking about. A change is nothing but, right, an action, right, that you do on a system. You do on a system. When I say action team, the action can be anything, right? It can be create a file or delete a file, whatever it is. Create, delete, or update a file, or whatever it may be. You think about it, this can be called as a change. Similarly, you can think about installing an application or installing a software or updating a software, or let's say that I'm uninstalling a software, right? There are many actions that you do it on a system. Now anything that you do it on a system is simply called as a change, right? So understanding this point team here is that we are talking about the changes that need to be due to a n number of servers. If it is a single server, again I can simply log into the server. I mean, like you log into your Windows machine and you do something installation, whatever you want to do it. Single server can be done, but in real time we will be having hundreds of servers in each environment. Think about, if I want to create a file across 100 servers, how much time do you take it? Think about, if I want to delete or update a file across 500 servers, how do I do it? How do I maintain exactly the same configuration exactly all the servers? Now these are challenges team that we have it basically when you are implementing some changes in your infrastructure. There are many challenges comes into the picture because the infrastructure will be in a big scale, like number of servers will be more. So how do I implement these changes is the question, correct? So we need kind of an automation tool basically which helps us automate things, right? Now that is where team we talk about configuration management tool. That is where we talk about configuration management tool. So config management tools, right? Tools help us automate regular tasks, regular day-to-day tasks, whatever you have it. It can be any changes that you want to do it. You can do it through the configuration management tools. Helps us to automate the regular tasks. What we do it, right? Regular tasks, we can call it task or whatever you think about it. Task is nothing but a change, or task is nothing but some change you want to perform to a system. Now that is called as simply the config management tools help us do this one. Now, how does config management tool help us do this one tip? There are many configuration management tools in the market, but here we are going to talk about Ansible as a configuration management tool. So we're going to simply discuss about something called as Ansible architecture, and with which we're going to understand about how Ansible works. Once after that one, we can simply implement the changes, or I'll show you how to implement the changes on target system sitting at one location. So let's try to understand the Ansible architecture team. That is what I'm going to do it. Now, when we talk about Ansible architecture team, we are talking about implementing changes across 100 servers or 500 servers, maybe whatever it is. But how do I make the changes? Do I have to log into all the system, or can I sit at one location and make the changes? Now, the purpose of configuration management is that team, or configuration management always tells that you can sit at one location and maintain the configurations of your entire infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, I consider that there could be a number of servers, right? Now that is what the purpose of every configuration management tools team. They say that you sit at one location. Let's say that there is a machine, I take it like team, I have my laptop right now. I have an app called as GoToWebinar, and I'm able to connect with you all, and I'm able to speak with you all. Sitting at one location, we are all able to connect with each other or do whatever we wanted, right? Similar to this team, this Ansible control also tells that you need to sit at one location, and if you want to implement any change on the target system, write something here and execute here itself, so that will go on perform the change, or tool will go there and perform the changes according to your requirement. Now that is something we call it as this one. So we simply take a machine team. Let's say that the Ubuntu OS, whatever it may be, we're taking it so far. Ubuntu is the target system we took it, or instance, AC2 instance with the Ubuntu operating system. On top of it, I'm going to install a tool called as Ansible, just like we installed Git to work with Git, just like we installed Jenkins to work with Jenkins. Similarly, we're going to install a tool called as Ansible to work with Ansible accordingly. Now this machine team where you install the Ansible, that machine will be called as technically Ansible controller. Controller we call it, means that this is the one who's going to control the entire infrastructure changes. We simply name it as Ansible controller, right? Now this is what it is team. Ansible works on a thing called as Python. Don't worry that you need to learn the Python here. That is nothing as such. Ansible is very simple to work with. You do not need to learn the Python everything, but just for your information, Ansible was a tool developed on something called as Python language. So it internally uses a Python to make the changes accordingly. So it will take care of those things. You just need to worry about how to write Ansible instruction. Now that is one thing team, just for information. Now once you have Ansible with you, right? Once you have Ansible installed on the system, one system, now you need to work on the target systems, right? Means that there are some target system. I have it, let's say that machine one or target one, target two. These can be any systems team. Like think that this can be another Ubuntu instance or whatever it may be. If I want to implement some change on the target system, I can simply use my tool to perform the changes. Let's say that how do I connect to this system, or how Ansible will be able to log into these systems to perform the changes, right? Now team, try to understand how we were able to connect to the EC2 instance from our local Windows machine is that using a SSH protocol, correct? Now the same protocol will be used by the Ansible also. The same way you did something called as SSH-I something. Using SSH protocol, you provide a username and key file or username and passwords, whatever it may be. Similar to that one, Ansible also going to use something called as SSH protocol to connect to the target system, right? And it will start logging into the target system by providing the username, and you need to provide the username to the tool. So tool will use the username and key file, like SSH keys we call it. Like you're using the key, right? The key file is called as nothing but SSH key only. So we use that SSH key to log into the target system, and Ansible can log in on behalf of you, and it will start making the changes on the target system accordingly. This is a architecture we call it. Ansible is also known as agentless architecture. What do you mean by agentless architecture is that in order to connect to the target system, on the target system, let's say that this is my target one or target two, whatever the target system where you're trying to implement the changes, on the target machine, we do not need to install anything related to Ansible, nothing else. Just install your Ansible and start working with Ansible. That's all you're going to do it. That is the reason it is called as Ansible is agentless architecture, right? And Ansible follows something called as push model to be discussing, right? Push model is something team, we're going to execute a command here. Let's say that whatever I want to get it from the target system, I want to get CPU of the target system. I run a command on the controller sitting on the controller machine. I simply log in here, I run a command, whatever it is, to get the metrics. It will gonna run the target machine, it is going to get me. So we are sitting on the controller machine and pushing the instruction to the target system and getting the information about the target system. Or even you create a file or delete a file, whatever you do it, you can do it accordingly. Now this is why it is called as push model. And this is called as entirely the Ansible architecture team in simple words. How does Ansible works here? Now one last thing here, how does Ansible know about the target systems where it has to implement the changes is that Ansible uses something called as inventory, right? So inventory in the sense we will have a file, or we will have a file on the controller machine. We create an inventory file, and we're going to see that we're going to mention the IP address of the target machines. Like when you're logging into the SSH team, you're using the public IP address of the EC2 instance. Similarly, we need to mention the IP address of the target system to the uh, Ansible here. So Ansible going to use this one, and using this inventory, it is going to log into the target system, and it is going to start making the changes. So it is going to use the inventory, the IP addresses, and it is going to use a username and password to log into the target system automatically, everything. Instead of you logging in, Ansible can log into the target system and start implementing the changes across the servers accordingly. This is what it is team. Once finally this is there, and how do I write my Ansible commands, or how can I write my Ansible instruction is that there are two ways Ansible does the instruction execution on the target system. One thing is called as ad hoc way, means that let's say that I want to run a single task, a single instruction. You think about it. Let's say that I simply want to create a file, single create file. The create file is a single task you can think of. So when I simply want to create a file, I use a single task. Now that can be run as an ad hoc command. We're gonna work on all these things, so don't worry. So and the think about that, I want to execute a series of instruction. Let's say that I want to log into the target system, install a web server, or install Java, and make some configuration changes to the files. and then finally start a service, and all these things need to be taken care, just like we installed yesterday, right? Used a shell script to install Java, install Jenkins, install Maven. These are all series of tasks that you are doing it on a target system. So we can give these tasks to the Ansible using something called as playbook. Playbook is a file or a script that you can think about. Yesterday we used a shell script to run all those things. Today we can use the same thing with Ansible also. Ansible can be used simply to run some task on the target system accordingly. Okay, so playbooks are nothing but we call it as multiple tasks that you want to run on the target system accordingly. This is how we're going to work with it. These are the two things. Now, how do I write the ad hoc command or playbook? Basically, Ansible gives something called as modules. Modules, in a sense, there are predefined syntaxing or predefined words will be given to you by the Ansible. So we simply have to write that. So let's say that if I want to create a file, there is a file module will be available. If I want to copy something, then there is a copy module, just like you have a copy commands, right? In your when the Linux machine, if you want to create a directory, there is mkdir command. If I want to create a file, there is a touch command. If I want to let's say that copy a file, there is a cp command. Similar to that one, Ansible provides these modules to perform the regular task accordingly. So you just have to use it. If I want to restart a service, I use a service module. So there are many modules available for Ansible with which we are actually going to use it to write the instruction for the things accordingly. Now this is just about the Ansible architecture team. What exactly we are trying to do is that once our application is ready, our environment should be ready. So we are trying to prepare our environments using a tool called as Ansible. Ansible is a configuration management tool which helps us automating the regular task of doing anything on your infrastructure in a large scale. If it is couple of servers, I can do it manually, but if it is a huge number of servers, we must use a tool such as Ansible to implement the changes. Now, in order to implement all these things, team, let's get into the practical mode here. This is just a theory part which we discussed. Hope you all clear on these points. Now, with this understanding, team, let's start practicing or start practically look at this, how it is going to help us accordingly. Okay. So let me set up this one thing. Here we need to take a server, first of all, install Ansible on it, and let's set up a couple of target machines also to implement the changes on the target machines. So what I did today is that, team, before we starting the session, I created 3 instances, right? Let's say that these are the 3 instances which I done right now. Let's say that here. So here it is, right? So I have named one server as Ansible controller. So we're going to install the Ansible on this machine. So let me log into this machine first of all. I'll use the same way which we logged in yesterday. So git bash, right? Go to the folder where you have it. So the file name which I'll be having is, okay, so let me see this key name, team, which key I'm using it here. What is the key? The key name is DevOps. So let me use the DevOps. Okay. So here it is, ssh-i devops.pem file, and then Ubuntu @ this is the server, right? This is the first machine, team, where I'm logging in, and I'm going to use this machine as an Ansible controller software. Instead, we're going to install the Ansible here. Let's say that this is the machine which I logged in. I switch to the root user, right? So what I'll do is I'll change the color for this one, team. So we'll consider this as a controller basically, just to make sure that you are not confusing. I'll change the color of this one. Wherever you see this yellow color right now, right? This is nothing but your controller machine, team. Similarly, let's log into the target machines also by using other things. So let me log into the target one, which is this IP address. So I'm going to use another git bash prompt. So cd downloads. I'm going to the folder where my file is exist, ssh-i devops.pem, and Ubuntu @ this one. So we are able to log in here. Good. The first target I logged in, team, and let's log into the second target machine also. Okay, so ssh, wait a second, cd downloads. Ubuntu @ this one. So here it is team. So I'm able to log into all the machines right now. There are three different servers which I have it. Two of them I'm going to use it as target machines where we will be implementing the changes by sitting on the controller machine. These two white color are the target machines, and I'm going to use this yellow color, which is nothing but your Ansible controller machine, which we're going to use it accordingly, right? Now let's go ahead and then for installation tip team, I think you have the installation steps available in this one. So go to the DU labs, which I provided for you, and go to the Ansible section here, and then under the install sections, you have an installation instruction accordingly. So we're going to follow these installation instruction. So let's follow this one team. Install Ansible on Ubuntu. I'm installing the Ansible on one machine for the first machine, which I'm going to use this. Okay. I'm installing Ansible only on the first machine team. This is important that you need to do it. Once the Ansible is installed, then we can go ahead and work with Ansible accordingly. We need to set up the communication between both the servers also. Then we will do it accordingly. Okay. So finally, I'm installing the Ansible team. As I said, like Ansible is agentless, so we're not going to install anything on the target system. Simply that we were worried about whatever the changes that can be done on the target system. That's all we're going to do it. Okay. Great. So let's look at it. So here it is team. We have installed Ansible successfully on our machine. First of all, the first machine, which is going to be Ansible hyphen version. Now you can see that we are able to see the Ansible is responding for us, and along with that it is giving you a default installation location team. This is what it is. So let's go to the default installation location. I will show you both things here. There are two things, very important things will be available. If you go to cd etc Ansible team, there you will see a file called as host file. As I said, like we need to give the target machine IP addresses to the controller machine. So we need to modify this file. This is called as an inventory file in Ansible terminology. So we can open this file and we can give the inventory so that Ansible will be able to read these things accordingly here. That's all we're going to do it. So let's prepare our inventory here first of all, right? Let me open this file. This is giving you some examples team how to configure inventory, but this is all not required for us. We can simply delete all this search out. This one you can read it whenever you have some choice, but I'm just saying that I'm just emptying the file. And what I'm going to do team here is that I'm going to put the IP address of my both target nodes. Let's say this is my target IP address. Take this one out and prepare this inventory first of all. And the second thing is that put the second target server where I want to implement the changes. This is how team we can simply prepare the inventory for my target systems. Once I have the inventory ready, we can ask Ansible to make some changes on the target system. But before that one team, again, let's try to understand that we just installed the Ansible, but we haven't, we configured the inventory. Now Ansible knows on which system it has to make the changes. There are two servers which are telling it has to make the changes, which is nothing but these two servers, right? Now, but first of all, how does Ansible will be able to log into these two systems? We need to set up SSH keys, right? Means that we need to give Ansible that how does Ansible going to set up or log into these machines? We need to give a username to the Ansible, and we also need to give a password or a key file to the Ansible so that Ansible uses those things to log into the system accordingly. Now here team, we will be worrying about how to set up, you know, how to set up the SSH keys for it so that Ansible will be able to log into the target system accordingly. Now for this team, I have the document here again for the communication to set up between the nodes and the target system. So here it is. There is an SSH key setup which I'm mentioning it. You just have to follow this document to implement these changes accordingly. So what I'm doing, it seems, as I said, like whenever using SSH, it requires always a username, right, and the key file for that particular username. So instead of using a default users team, I'm using a special user, or I'm creating a user for my communication purposes using a user add command, which is called as, this is a Linux command team using which we are creating a user called as Ansible, and for which user only we're gonna start making the changes. Okay, so let's create a user on all the target machines team, controller and all targets. So what I'll do is I'll create this one Ansible user on my controller machine. Okay, similarly, I'm going to create the same user on target machines also. This is for the communication part team. We must set up this one. This is a one-time activity. Once this is done, we can start making the changes accordingly. Okay, or we can ask Ansible to make the changes so that Ansible can log in and do the things accordingly. Now that is the first part, creating a user, but in some cases team, we might need a sudo privileges also, like we are doing, like after logging into the Ubuntu user or something, we are switching to something called as, the sudo su hyphen, we are switching to root user and doing some tasks. Means that in order to perform some tasks, we might need a root privileges. In order to do that one, we are providing the Ansible user sudo or permission, nothing but Ansible user can do a sudo su hyphen to switch to a root user. That is a permission I'm setting up for the user which we created. Let's do this one on all the systems again. We can simply do this. Just execute these commands team, which will be good enough for us to run it. So now we have this one is done team. Ansible given enough permissions for us. Now what exactly we will do is that we actually going to create SSH key for this particular user. The user that we created, we're going to generate a key for him, because an AWS instances by default does not accept the passwords. If it accepts the password, we can create the password also, but we are not going to work with passwords. We are going to work with SSH keys only. That is a secure communication that can be set up with Ansible. So Ansible also suggests that you need to pass through the SSH keys to make some changes on the target system. So what exactly we need to do here is that we need to generate SSH keys. Let's say that generate SSH keys for the above user, nothing but the Ansible user on the controller machine. So what exactly we do is we need to switch to the user. Let's use this command to switch to the user only on the controller machine team. Follow this carefully. su-ansible. Now we switched from the root user to the Ansible user. Now with Ansible user, there is a command to generate the SSH keys. For that, we will use a SSH keygen command. This is a default with Linux. So we can simply run this command to run the things accordingly, right? It will ask you to enter some inputs team. Do not enter anything, just enter and enter it. So it is just going to generate the default keys accordingly for us. Now once the SSH keys are generated team, you can simply validate them by running a command called as ls-al. Now you see a folder here called as .ssh. This is where we simply go for it, go inside this particular folder, and after this one you will see there are two SSH keys. One thing is called as a private key and one thing is called as a public key. Now in order for you to log into the target system with SSH keys team, we will share this public key with the target system, so that whenever you log in from the controller machine to the login target system, the target system validates the public key on that server to validate the user accordingly, and it will let the login inside it. Now that is what are we going to do it. So let's do something here. Let's say cat this one. We will take this key team first of all. This is a manual setup team for the first time only, but after that we're going to work on this carefully. Copy this key carefully and copy to the notepad. Ensure that it is in a single line team. Let me show you that. Remove the word wrap. Ensure that it is showing up in a single line like this. Ensure that this is mandatory. There would be no there while copy pasting team, you might face some copy paste issues, so you have to be very careful here. So once you have copied this one successfully team, as per the document, copy your SSH keys from the controller to all the target machines. On the controller machine, we just went to this folder and we copied this key successfully. Now on all the target machines, we will switch to the Ansible user again. This is what all I'm gonna do it. So let's get to here. Switch to the Ansible user on the target machines, right? And you're gonna copy paste these commands again, whatever I have given here. We are creating a directory called as .ssh, and we are creating a file called as authorized keys. We are making that Ansible control is an authorized server to log into this machine. That is what I'm doing it, and we're gonna change the permissions for this file accordingly. Copy these things and paste it on both the machines. So it is gonna run it. I think it didn't run me team, so let me run this command again carefully. Run it carefully team, it must have created. Let's say that touch this one, right? And finally change the permissions. Copy pasting is having some issue team, it is throwing some errors, so I'm just copying one by one. Okay, what exactly is saying that authorized key? Okay, it's keys, right? That is what it is. Okay, great. So the spelling mistake team, it is keys we created and it is looking for key file. That is it is telling that one. That's okay. Now run the same commands on the second control target machine also. Paste it. That's a copy paste issue. As you see it, must be copying successfully, carefully. So here it is. Paste it. And finally run the third command also, which is this one, updating the permissions on the system. Right here it is. Now we have done creating the file team, but we must copy the key into this file. So we're going to modify this file, which is going to be this one, right? Dot, let's say that cd home Ansible. We are going to .ssh folder, right? Vi authorized keys. Now copy paste that key team, what you have it in the notepad. Carefully copy paste this one into that file and then keep it ready. This is like setting up communication team. Once you have this one is ready, then we can go and start making the changes accordingly. I'm just saving the file, and let's do the same thing on the second controller machine, target machine also. cd.ssh, I'll do it. Now vi authorized keys file, enter it. Sorry. So copy very carefully team, and here it is. Save the file. Now that we have set up the SSH keys team on both the servers, right? On both the servers, let's validate my Ansible user is able to log into the target system or not. Here it is team, from the controller machine. Now we should be able to log into the target systems. That is what all we want to understand it. Okay. So what exactly we do team here is that, let's say that SSH, right? We can use Ansible user, right? Because it's a user team and we have already copied the SSH keys. You need not to use the -i parameters and everything accordingly. So here it is, and we can simply use the IP address of the target machine. Let's say that here I'm going to use it. So target node 1, which I'm trying to use it. Copy this IP address, right? Say yes. See that team, we are able to log into this particular machine from the 193. We have switched to the another machine successfully. We are able to log into that one without any password. Now this is how we will actually set up the passwords, passwordless authentication by using SSH keys from the Ansible controller to the target machines. That's all you need to do it. Once you have done this one team, let's validate for the target 2 also, ensure that they are able to log in. And we use Ansible commands going forward to make any changes accordingly. Correct? So this is what it is. SSH Ansible @ this one. Say yes. Okay, we are able to log into the second target machine also from the Ansible user. From the controller machine, we are able to log into the target system team without any username or password by sharing the SSH keys accordingly. Let's log out to this machine or come back to our system. So we are on Ansible server team right now, Ansible controller machine, just to show you that Ansible -- version, right? We are inside this Ansible controller machine now. We are able to set up the SSH keys on the target system. From now onwards team, even if I want to create a file, I need not to log into the target system. We simply going to make changes using Ansible controller directly. That is what all we're gonna do it. So let's look at that. We have to do it. Okay. Right. So that is what it is. Priyanka, I think Priya, please use the questions panel. Maybe that will be easy to use it. Please don't use a question, chat window for questions. Use the questions panel on your window. Yes, we have opened the Git application for 3 times, Git bash for the 3 times. Okay. Okay, so great here. So now we are doing Ansible controller changes team. Now we have successfully installed. Let me show you the diagram again. What exactly we did is here is that we took a machine and we installed Ansible on that machine. That machine is called as Ansible controller. Since Ansible needs the username and SSH keys to set up, so what exactly we did is we created a user called as Ansible on the Ansible controller and also on the target machines Ansible user. Now on the controller machine, we generated an SSH keys for this controller machine Ansible user. We shared the SSH key of Ansible user to the target machines so that whenever Ansible controller logs into the target system using an Ansible user, the target machines would not ask the password one more time to log into it. So we are setting up a passwordless authentication using SSH keys here. If you want to set up a password based authentication, that also possible. we can do simply that also, but we are using a passwordless authentication using SSH keys accordingly. We simply create SSH keys on the controller machine. That SSH key has been shared with the target system. So whenever Ansible controller try to log into it, it will get authenticated with that SSH key that we copied on the target system automatically, and it will log into the system accordingly. Now that is what all we taken care team so far. Now, once we have this setup is ready, assume that your Ansible controller setup is ready and we are able to log into the target machine successfully, or Ansible is able to log into the target machine successfully. Now, how am I going to run the Ansible instructions? So as we saw the term already, we have already prepared an inventory file, which is under the etc Ansible folder. Let me show you that. Cat, you have this one, right? This is the default folder, we have it, etc Ansible. This is comes with the installation basically. There we have a file called as host file. Let's say that cat etc host, right? So we can see that, sorry, it is etc Ansible hosting. So etc Ansible host, there we have mentioned both the target server IP addresses, right? Now once we have the inventory setup is ready team, once we have the inventory is ready on the target systems, now how do I execute my Ansible instruction is the question, right? So that's all about it. So uh, let's have this one team. The first and foremost command team, in order to run any commands, or we're gonna run one by one team. We're gonna understand about Ansible ad hoc commands first of all, which means that I'm going to run a single instructions on the target systems first of all. How do I run single instructions on the target systems? By sitting at controller machine, how do I run the commands on the target system? That is what we're going to do it. Now once after that one is done, we can jump onto the playbooks accordingly. Okay, so here it is. Now I'm sitting on the controller machine team. Let's say that I want to ping the target systems first of all. Let's say that Ansible is a command, I'm using it. Now all, I'm going to mention all team. When I'm saying all here, which means that all the IP addresses that I mentioned in the inventory file, or I can mention the inventory file also which I want to use it. Let's say that -I is for inventory, and let's say that etc Ansible host. This is the inventory file. In this file, I mentioned my target machine IP addresses. I want to use this inventory, use this inventory, and let's say that all keyword, which means that I want to ping all the host under this particular inventory file. Now what action I want to do it here? -M is a module team, as I discussed, like these are the modules we're going to use it, or Ansible modules are the one we're going to use it to perform some task on the target system. So what I'm using here is ping is a module. Ping is a module team. You know what is a ping basically, whether the server is online or not, we're going to validate it. If Ansible is able to ping the server, which means that the target system Ansible is able to communicate with accordingly. And since team, assume that we are running the command as Ansible user, so Ansible consider that is going to use an Ansible user. And since we already shared the SSH keys also to the target system, it is not required any username password right now. Simply run this command team. If it is able to do it, it will write a successful output like this. We say that Ansible is able to talk to the target system, and ping pong is a response, which means that Ansible is able to communicate with the target system successfully and get the information or whatever it is Ansible is able to communicate. Now this is how team you need to understand things. Ansible is now able to communicate it. Now after this one team, if I want to perform any change on the target system, I can simply do it. So let me show you. This is just a ping team. It doesn't make any change on the target system. It is just telling that the target systems are online. Now let's worry about, let's say that I ask you to create a file. I want to create a file on the target system. So how do I create a file on the target system? Sitting at this location team. I want to sit on the controller machine itself, but I want to create a file on the target machine. That is what I'm going to do. Let me show you first of all on the target system. Let's say that under this one cd temp folder, I want to create a file on the target system. Under the temp folder, right now there is no files available here, only 3 folders: lab, system, and system. There is 3 folders available. So I want to same system here also on both the target systems, just showing that there is no files exist here already. There are no files here. I'm not logging into the systems, but I'm going to create a file on the target system by controller machine. Now, how do I create a file team? In order to create a file, we have a module called as file modules. We're going to use it. Ansible -I. I'm using that. Take this inventory again, whatever it is, you have it. all I'm doing it, and all the servers in the inventory. And -m module I'm going to use is something called as file. Means I want to create a file on the target system. So I'm just saying that use the file module to create it. Now file module requires the input stream, like what file you want to create it, where you want to create it. All those inputs need to be given to this one. That is why we call this as arguments need to be given to this one, or attributes need to given to this module. We use a parameter called as -a to provide the parameters or attributes to this particular module. Let's say that I'm using this one. I want to create under the temp folder. So I say that path where it has to be created. Path is an attribute here. Please take it. This is a predefined value itself. Path, I'm going to tell it. Let's say that temp, I want to create a file called as naresh.txt. This is what I'm using it, right? Now, along with that, this is team, whether this is a file or not, Ansible does not know. We need to say that this is a file basically. So what is a command which I usually use to create a file is touch, right? So Ansible implement the same thing. Now the state is a keyword here. We can say that state is equals to touch, means that I'm asking now Ansible go to the target machine. I'm asking to touch this particular file on the system. Means touching the file means that one, it is going to create a file accordingly. Now this is the simplest command team to sit and sit in the controller machine to perform changes on the target system, right? Execute this one. It is going to tell you something. Okay, it did something. Now Ansible is saying that I changed something, means that current system is having some desired state and I'm changed something to that system. That is what it is, right? It created a file. So it says that, okay, something has changed on the target system from the previous state to the current desired state accordingly. That is what we call it. Now we implemented the change team. It says that file is created, right? If I want to quickly validate it, I'll go to this target system, do ls-l again. See that naresh.txt got created. Did I log into this machine team? No, right? We did not log in, but we still did a change here, or we still created a file here. Likewise, team, if I have 500 servers also, if I ask you to do the change or create a file, you need to log into each and every machine to create a file, right? How much time do you need for that task? Basically, think about that. Similarly, if I want to do a single change with Ansible controller, it takes minutes for me. Even it is a 500 servers also, then the same command. Only thing is that your inventory file should have all the IP addresses inside that particular inventory file. Whatever the inventory that we are using it here, this inventory file, right now it has two hosts only, right? Two servers only. If I mention all 500 server IP address in this one, Ansible can perform the same operation across all 500 servers in parallel. And within 2 minutes, you will see that the file will be created on all the 500 servers. If I want to implement the same thing manually, it will take hours of time completely for a simple person. That is what is the advantage that you get it, right? Similarly, team, let's run one more ad hoc command here. So in order to validate team again, in order to validate, I was going to the server to see it, but in order to go to the target system means whatever the ls-l command that you run it there, we can simply run it through the this one itself. Means for validation team, if I want to validate it, I go to the target system, I list the temp folder where I created a file to see the file is created or not. So if I want to do the same operation from the controller itself, I can still do that, right? There is a module called as shell basically, and shell also requires something called as arguments. So ls-l/temp, right? This is what is a perform command. I have run it on the target system also, but I'm running this one from console controller itself. Let's do this one. So on both the machines, you can see that the output of the temp folder is coming up here. So on both the machines, I have the Naresh file created successfully. So even for the validation, we don't need to log into the systems. Sitting on the controller machine itself, we can simply validate whether it is created or not by using a specific commands accordingly. Now, this is the advantage team. Think about this. This is the advantage basically that you get it whenever you are sitting in one location and making a changes across your infrastructure. Our configuration management tool will help you perform any change that you want to do it in your infrastructure. Can be sitting at one location. We can control the entire configurations across various servers on the target system or entire your infrastructure accordingly. Now this is the purpose of the tool team. This is the purpose of the tool basically. We actually do it. Okay, now this is how you can simply understand about configuration management. Now these are all ad hoc commands team, whatever I'm writing so far. We used so far 3 to 4 modules, right? We used a ping module, we used a file module, and then we used a shell module also. Right now there are like this team, there are n number of modules are given by the Ansible. We simply have to make use of the Ansible modules to perform the changes accordingly. Okay, so all these things are now you can understand the things accordingly. Right, we can do that. So here it is. So let's say that I want to copy a file. First of all, also I can use a module called as copy module team. Let's say that I want to copy module, right? Let's say that I want to copy something. Let's say that copy is a module, I can use it. Again, copy will expect like you need to source from where you want to copy to where. Source and destination must be given. What copy, what file you need to copy, from where you want to copy to where. So here team, we use something simply called as, let's say that source I'm giving it is equals to temp devops.txt, something I'll give it devops.txt, and the destination I want to copy it on the target system again. Let's say that under the temp folder itself I want to copy it again. Now look at this one team. If I execute this one, let's try to understand a few commands here. Now it is going with some error. It says that could not access or find devops.txt, which means that team basically, which means that it is looking for the temp devops.txt in the controller machine. That is what is the problem basically. So source is always your controller machine. From the controller machine you want to copy to the target system. That is what it's expecting to do it. Now if I want to do that, let's say that if this file exists on my system, no, right, this file is not present on my system. It says that no such file or directory. So if I create a file here, simply, sorry, touch, I'm creating a file on this controller machine, right? All right, the file is exists now on my controller machine. If I simply go ahead and run the same command again, it is going to copy to the target system, right? You can see that it is says that again changed it, which is successfully changed, or it is successfully copied onto the target system. And if I want to validate again, I do not need to log into the target system. I can simply run a shell module again to validate it. You can see that devops.txt was copied onto the target system successfully. Now this is how team you need to understand about making the changes on the target system. A simple changes, we call it a simple ad hoc commands, we call it Ansible ad hoc commands. Sitting on the controller machine, I'll be able to perform any changes on the system. Right, correct. So this is what it is, right? This is how you can simply copy it accordingly. Now, if I want to get some other command stream, let's say that I want to know the disk space of my target system, I can simply run a command called as df-h. If you need to know the default Linux command stream to perform all these things, assume that df-h is a command basically which shows the disk's usage, how much was the disk size, how much is utilized, how much is available so far. So on both the servers, it is displaying it. If I ask you to manually do this task team, you may take at least 2 minutes, but Ansible, I did it in couple of seconds, right? That is how the advantage of your Ansible basically. And get the memory usage also. Free-m is a command. I can run any command as such if I want to run it on the target system. Sitting on the controller machine, I can do any change on the target systems accordingly. So this is what all we can do it, right? We can do all those things accordingly. So this is how team, this is how basically we can simply do the changes on target systems. Now, these are all the single task team. Try to understand that. I know I'm doing the good changes. Now you understood, like sitting on the controller machine, we will be able to make any change. Now, why exactly always a single change? Why can't we do multiple changes? Or let's say that I want to perform a series of tasks. I want to log in. First of all, I create a file, I modify a file, I want to install Java, I want to install Tomcat, I want to make some configuration changes. So there are a number of steps I want to do it. So why can't we all do that changes accordingly? Now to do that one team basically, so we need to write, means whenever you think about writing multiple instruction, you must write something called as playbooks. A playbook is a script that consists of multiple instruction, multiple tasks that you need to be performed on the target system accordingly. Okay. Can we install OS also in target system from Ansible controller? No, it is not to install the OS basically once, because Ansible is using SSH to log in, right? Once the operating system is available, once the system is available, you can perform any change. You can do the patches, you can do the OS upgrades maybe, but not the OS installation can be done with Ansible controller. Okay, because the system must be ready to log in to make some changes. That is what is the dependency here. So for a cloud controllers, we may create EC2 instances using Ansible, but that's not the case here. Okay. So here it is. Let's start writing the playbooks team. Think about executing multiple instruction. We have done enough ad hoc right now. There are many ad hoc commands which I have given to you guys. If you're interested, run through them, right? Inside your Ansible folder, go to ad hoc. Multiple ad hoc commands I have given here. So go through these ones accordingly. Now we're going to work on something called as playbooks team. What are playbooks and why do we need the playbooks basically? How exactly we're going to use the playbooks to execute the instruction accordingly, right? So here it is team. Just to explain that Ansible playbook is a script that consists of set of instruction, right? Which we want to run on the remote servers. The script is written using Ansible modules again in human friendly readable format by using YAML. Means that in the playbook follows a syntaxing called as YAML. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of a YAML already, but let me discuss about the simple YAML team. I'm going to tell it. YAML is going to dependent on YAML is known as a data serialization format. When I say data serialization team, it is just to represent the data. Means that in order to show the data to some people, right? Let's say that you use a Word document, right? Or you write a nice PDF and you represent the data to the people. Similarly, our applications or a programming language, if they want to read the data, they must have to be written in a format. Now YAML is one of the best formats that we have it right now, which is called as data serialization format. We have it, so which we're going to write it in the format. If you don't know, that's fine, everything is there. I'm going to explain it in simple words team. YAML is basically follows something called as indentation rules. So YAML, for YAML team, there are many editors available in the market. You can use the YAML editors to write the YAML programming or YAML syntaxing, we call it, not a program basically, but YAML syntaxing. So YAML follows something team. First rule is called as indentation rule. When I say indentation rule team, which is nothing but the spaces. So the file while you're writing a YAML file, basically you must use some spaces appropriately to represent the data. Without using the spaces, if you write it, it does not understand anything, so we must use it. That is about the first rule, and that is the only rule which followed by the YAML to represent the data. So you must use appropriate spaces wherever necessary. And how do I write these data serializations again? So Ansible has three different things in it. So I mean, Notepad++ is one of the YAML editor team. I can use this Notepad++ for YAML editing, so I can change the language to YAML here. See that? Now I can see that this is my YAML editor page basically where I can write it. So whenever you write the YAML stream, there are three main things in YAML. Like first thing is about the spaces, you need to be used appropriately. But how do I implement the spaces, on what conditions I do the spacing actually? Though in order to implement these spaces, Ansible defines something called as three things. The first thing was called as a key value pair. Let's say that key and then the value. So whenever I say key value team, I'll explain about it. Let's say that key is some value basically, and the key always ends with something called as colon, and after the colon there must be a space given, a single space given to provide the value to that. This can be called as a string basically in YAML terminology, strings. Example is that I'm defining a value called as car. Now the name of the car is BMW, right? Car BMW is nothing but a value, key and value where, that is what I'm saying it. Or let's say that I use something called as name Naresh. So both are same here. The extensions of the file can be YAML or YML. Both are one in same. There is no difference in it. You can use either YML or YML. Both represent the same thing here. Doesn't matter for it. And just to come to the YAML abbreviation team, YAML is, right, if you are coming to the YAML application, YAML ain't, this is the call it, ain't a markup language, right? This is what the full form of your YAML syntaxing. YAML, YAML ain't a markup language. That is what the meaning of YAML basically, or YML also the same thing accordingly. So we use something called as team. It uses indentation, and this is what it is. Key value pair, like name Naresh, it's like a straightforward key value pair. That's what we use it. Now that is the first type of a data that you see it inside your things. data types we call it. When you're rewriting your YAML file, we use some data types. First thing is called as strings. The string is nothing but a straightforward key. A key ends with a colon always, and there's something called as narration. This is a key value pair in simple words, right? Now the second type of a data type, right? Second type of a data types. Let me show you this one, right? So here it is. YAML follows something called as data types. There are three data types basically. Let's say that the first thing is called as strings. Second thing is called as dictionary or maps. We call it both are one and same. Third thing is called as array or a list. This is what is the three data types team which we use in a YAML basically always. Now you understood the straightforward thing, which is a key value pair, which is called as strings in it. So there would be a name, and the name always or a key always ends with something called as this one, and the narration is a value for that accordingly. Now this is the first data type team that you use it. Now when we talk about a dictionary or a map type inside your YAML file, which follows something called as a multiple properties or multiple assets assigned to a single object. So let's say that car is a key here, I'm using it. Now when I say car team, car can have multiple properties, right? What is the name of the car, like that. Now in order to define multiple properties for a single object team or a single key here, think about this is a single key. Now if I want to define multiple attribute towards it or multiple properties to it, since these properties belongs to the car, so you must do minimum two spaces below. As I said, like YAML follows the two spaces. So if you want to represent the data for car multiple properties, you must go with below and give two spaces, and I'll say now name, let's say that BMW, and the color of the car is, let's say that white. Let's say that engine of the car is something, this one, right? So a 3-liter engine, maybe that's one. So this is how team you can think about it. Now all these three properties are belongs to an object or a key called as car, right? That is what you can think about it. This is a straightforward key value pair, again can be called as a string, but when you apply multiple properties to a single object, that is called as a dictionary. Okay, so car having a dictionary, no, dictionary of values, something we call it. This is what is a map or a dictionary team. It's a straightforward thing, and ensure that you can see that all these properties are belongs to this one, or name, color and engine are the childs of the car basically. That's what you need to understand. If you move this spaces team, let's say that now you can see that only name is the child of a car and color is another separate property in your things. That is what is. That is the reason we say that the spacing is very important. So name, color and both are the childrens of your car. So we are putting under the same level here, same indentation. Now if you move this one alongside here, now color becomes the child of name, right? So this is not the child or property of a name basically. This is still this one. That is the reason we must use something like this, right? So all these three belongs to this one. That is the reason we see that indentation or spaces are very, very important keys here to write a YAML file. Always ensure that you must use the appropriate spaces wherever is necessary. If you don't know still now also team, that's fine. You can start looking at it. You will understand things as in when you start writing it, but try to keep these things in the mind whenever you're writing the YAMLs. Now this is the second type of a data type team that you see it inside your YAML file. First is a straightforward key value pair. Second is a dictionary of something, and a third thing is called as array or a list, right? Now for example team, here is that instead of car I'll say cars. When I say cars team, it could be consisting of a list of cars. First of all, think that. Now in order to provide the list, again we move two spaces the same way, because list belongs to the cars again. So what is the list basically team? How do I differentiate between a dictionary and a list? Is that a list always starts with a hyphen in front, means that it is a zeroth index or array, right? Array has indexes, right? Like 0, 1, 2, 3 values, all things belongs to the same array basically. So whenever you create an array, it's a zeroth index, and like that you have it. Let's say that BMW is a car, and the second array, second instance of the array basically is called as Audi, whatever you have it, and the third instance is that Maruti. So whatever the cars that you have it, the list of cars belongs to this one account. So this is called as a list team. Simply we call this is list, and this is a dictionary basically. You can think about it. Okay, now how do you write more complex YAMLs? Is that right? This is the only top level 3 data types team that you use it, but you may go in the nested fields again. Means that you can nest. Nesting is something, a dictionary inside a dictionary or a dictionary inside a dictionary. You can go nesting the things accordingly. Similarly, a list inside a dictionary or a dictionary inside a list accordingly. So you can go for it. For example, Let's say that BMW is a list value inside the cars object, but BMW is again a dictionary here. You can think about it. Let's say that if the BMW is a dictionary, I can use this one. BMW is a value and BMW is a dictionary. So I need to move two spaces here again. Let's say that color of the BMW, I can mention it again, red, right? Engine in the, this one is this one. Let's say that 3-liter engine again. So this is how you can mention, right? This is nothing but a list, a dictionary inside the list values accordingly. You can think about this is how team we will start writing more complex YAMLs also, but this is the basic thing that you need to have it. On the top level, it will always have 3 data types, which is called as strings, arrays and list, or dictionary maps accordingly. These are all the things only you will see it. Now, based on this understanding team, we will start writing our YAML files for Ansible basically. Now I'll show you simply, you can correlate them with these things accordingly. We will start writing the YAML file for your Ansible. So let me show you a basic YAML file first of all, which I'm going to write it on the controller itself for implementing the changes on the target system. So I'll name anything team, you can name anything for the name basically. Let's say that VI playbook 1, right? Playbook 1.yml. This is what I'm saying it. YML or YAML, you can give any extension, that should be fine. Either of it will work exactly the same way. Okay, so here it is team. First thing is that I need to mention in my playbook, I'll call it, it is a list. Basically, I start with the list always. We'll talk about why it is a list. Let's say that host, I'm telling it, host is a keyword, which I'm telling it, which means that the set of instruction I'm going to write below are going to execute on what set of host. The same keyword that we have given on the controller team. Let's say that all is a keyword, means that all inventory, means all the IP addresses in the inventory file, I'm going to run these tasks accordingly. That is the first keyword I'm telling it. Now the second thing is that team, I want to write the tasks, right? The task is nothing but instructions that you want to put it. So I'm defining a keyword called as tasks. Now the tasks team, it can be different types of tasks or a list of tasks. Basically, you can have it task 1, task 2, task 3. So task becomes the list here basically simply. So you just simply go with the below. Let's say that from the task, move 2 spaces inside it. The first item in the task, let's say that copy is the task which I'm doing it. Again, copy is a list basically. Similarly, I can have another list item basically. Let's say that file is another copy, find another task under the task. So there is a list of tasks, I can write it. Again, when I use a copy, basically copy requires some attributes to it. What is the file you want to copy, where you want to copy, all those things. So copy requires an attribute. So copy is a dictionary here. Simply we can think about it. Let's say that it requires this one source, from where, which file you want to copy it. Let's say that temp, all right. Let's say that gopal.txt something, I'll give it whatever it is. Now the destination is on the target server again. Let's say that the temp folder, I'm copying it, right? Temp folder on the target system. Now similarly, if I want to modify the permissions of it, let's say that mode, I'll give it, like updating the permissions, owner, group, everything you can update it, right? Here it is. Let's say that uh, 644 or let's say 600 permission I want to give it. That 0600, this is what the value I'm giving it, right? This is the first property team or first task. This is what I'm doing it. And the second task is about file, and file is a module which help us create a file or modify a file or create a directory also. Let's say that I want to create a directory, and this also requires a dictionary value stream accordingly. Let's say that path where I want to create it, I can create it under the temp folder again. I'm telling you, we'll change the paths again if you want to do it wherever you can create it. You can create anywhere on the system, but temp is a folder where you will not get any permission issues. I'm going to talk about the permissions accordingly. So here it is. Once we have done this one thing, let's say that a state I'm giving it. Let's say that I think this is what I need to give it. Temp, under the temp, what exactly I want to create it. Let's say that Kumar is a directory I want to create. It's a directory team. I'm not saying that the file. It's not about one directory I saying it. State is directory, which means that it is actually going to create a directory on the target systems accordingly. Now there are two tasks team, try to understand. These are the two tasks which I'm giving it to perform the things accordingly. Now this is what you can think about it. So host is all, against all the host in the inventory I want to perform these set of tasks accordingly. We're going to give a more realistic example also, but just try to understand this is a very, very basic thing which I'm trying to give you. Okay, so here it is. This is what I'm stopping it. So there are two tasks only. I have written very simple things. Now, once you have this playbook is ready, team, how do I execute this playbook is a question again, right? Now, in order to run the ad hoc commands, team, the command we used was Ansible. But in order to run our playbook, there is a special command called as Ansible playbook. This is a single command, team, Ansible hyphen playbook, no spaces in between. This is a single command basically, which is given by Ansible to run any playbook. You must give this one. Should I provide the inventory here again? I can provide the inventory if I wanted. Is that etc host, sorry, etc Ansible host is the inventory. I want to use it. And do I need to give the host which I want to perform team, because which we already given inside the invent playbook file, all the hosts we mentioned, so we do not to mention on the command line again. We can simply give the playbook name, right? This is the playbook name, that all I want to give it. So modules, everything is on which targets you want to mention, which is all, so that is also inside the playbook. And what are all the tasks that you want to perform, what are the modules, everything we written inside the playbook itself. We can simply mention the playbook name to execute everything. Now let's start executing this one, team. First of all, will it be successful is the question. So let me show you. It will be failing, team, because we are trying to copy a file called as gopal.txt, and as usual this must be something on your targets a controller machine which is not present, so which may fail. Let me create it first of all here, right? So I create file here and I run this command to make it successful accordingly. Let's do this one, run the playbook, right? So you can see that it is actually running the playbook. You can see that the copy task, it is successfully changed. It is not showing you the output, but it is actually showing this one. So it is changed, and this is also changed basically. Finally, it is giving a play recap. Basically, it's saying that it run almost 3 tasks altogether. There are 2 tasks that has changed it, right? And along with that, it says that any unreachable host, no. There are any failed tasks, no. There are any skipped tasks, we have it, no. There are any rescue tasks in case of your right, in case you are doing the error handling and everything in the playbooks, that is possible also. Right? So this is how you can understand about, right? Ignored cases, anything is there, that is what it is giving you, simply a play recap. Now you can see that simply, team, I copied a file. I also made some file changes accordingly on the target system. Now this is how you can simply understand about making the changes. Let me show you here. So there is a gopal.txt is created, along with that Kumar folder is also created. You can simply see that all things are done successfully, which we are able to do it. Now this is how, team, simply we can execute as many instruction as you want it. The playbook can be extended, right? The playbook can be extended to write hundreds of instruction. No matter what, you can write as many instructions as you wanted. Right now we have written only 2 tasks here. Likewise, you keep on writing 100 tasks also. Ansible going to take all those tasks and then going to execute it on all the target machines accordingly. That is how you can simply understand about the things. Now let me introduce one more thing, team, here. Try to understand, whenever we're trying to execute this instruction on the target system, Ansible is executing them with the Ansible user only. What I mean to say, you can see that the permissions of these files means that whenever I create a file, it is getting the permission of Ansible only. What I mean that one is that I am running the commands with Ansible user only. But in order to run a specific task, let's say that I want to create a file under the OPT folder. Let's go to the OPT folder, touch, let's say that test.txt, I'm doing it. Okay, it is successful, but okay, we are still under some team cd opt, we go it, we are under, now I enter the opt folder. Now let's say that touch test.txt, which will say that permission denied, which means that, team, if I do the same thing with the Ansible also would get the permission denied issue. Let's do this one. Look at this. Instead of creating under the temp folder, let's do it under the opt folder, which is a system folder basically, where you do not have the permissions, right? Okay, here it is temp only. Let's say that this is a controller, right? Temp, and the target is nothing but under the opt folder. I want to do it. Whether I get the permission here also, I'm trying to change it to opt folder. Now opt folder is a system folder, team. By default, it should not have any permission, so we can do this one, right? Correct. So let's look at this Ansible playbook, right? And -i etc Ansible host is inventory file, and let's say that playbook one, right? Now this time it should get some permission issues, team. As you can see that it is trying to, there's that it says that destination OPT is not writable, right? Because Ansible is the user we are trying to use it. Now that is where basically we are getting an issue that opt is not writable for the Ansible user. We must have escalated privileges, which means that we must be a root user to create a file on the OPT folder accordingly. So the question is that how my Ansible playbook can switch to the root user and then execute the instructions accordingly, or can I run some instruction with a root user or escalated permissions? Can I do it and do it or not? That is the question here. So yes, we can do that. Let me show you how to do that also. Task and then host, and these are the modules, or can we write any names? Those are predefined keywords, Sahil. Whatever I write it in the playbook, these are all the predefined keywords only. Task, host, the values can be your choice, but the keywords here like copy, src, destination, mode, file, these are all the things which are basically the predefined keywords. You must use them accordingly. You cannot use them. Values is your choice. This value is your choice, and this is OPT folder where you want to create. This is your choice. These are the right hand side is your choice, but the left hand side are mostly the predefined keywords that you have to use them accordingly only. Okay, these are called as modules. You can go to the Ansible documentation to find out all the modules and what are all the things I can do it accordingly. Okay, now, since team, as I was speaking about, by default, we are running with Ansible user and we do not have a permission to write something on the OPT folder for Ansible user. So Ansible user must be switching to a root user like you do it after you log in. Then it must perform the actions accordingly. Now, in order to do that one team, basically, we simply use a keyword here called as become, right? Become, I'm saying the team, whenever I say become yes here, on the top levels, when what I'm telling my Ansible is that after you log into the system, you become a root user. That is a default setting we have it. You become a root user and then start executing this task. That is what we are instructing Ansible to do it. Okay, so this is what it is team. Become yes is basically instruction. We are asking Ansible to become a root user after you log in and perform the changes accordingly. Now, once after I included this particular statement team, Ansible can become it. Now, if I run this one earlier, the playbook was failing because error. Now let's run the same playbook again. We'll see whether it's going to create it or not. Now this time team, you can see that it is simply making the changes without any errors or without anything here. That's how you can understand the things. If I want to validate here, go to the folder. Let's say that here I have it. You can see that both gopal.txt as well as Kumar got created under the OPT folder by Ansible, right? So with the root user permissions, everything is created successfully. Now this is how team we can ask Ansible to become a root user to perform the set of instructions. Also, we can perform any kind of a change, whatever it may be, whether it can be like installing, uninstalling, even to apply the OS patching, OS upgrades also we can do it. Whatever we want to do it, everything can be achieved with the Ansible account. All the things you need to worry about is we need to sit at one location and we can implement the same changes across n number of servers. Either it can be 100 or 500 or 1000, doesn't matter. Ansible can log into all those 1000 machines and perform the changes across the system wide, consistently, and it also gives you the changes easily. That is what it is the purpose of Ansible team. Now, just to conclude this, the Ansible playbooks here team, I'm going to show you a realistic example where we can go ahead and install some set of softwares and make some configuration changes and everything can be done. So let me get a playbook team. I know that we can write a playbook, but to write this realistic playbook, it takes some time for it. So let's me copy paste some playbook first of all, and I'll explain you that things accordingly. Okay, I'll give you all these things, so don't worry. So let me get these things quickly and then we'll do it. I'm trying to set up a Tomcat team. We will do that accordingly. Using various modules, basically, I'm going to do all of them, but let me write this one. Hope you're all able to see my screen. So let me write a playbook team here. I'm just copy pasting the content basically. So let's say that vi tomcat.yml. I'm going to set up a Tomcat on my target system. Let's say that here it is. I'm just copy pasting the task team. There are many tasks here, so don't worry about it. I'm going to explain one after the other. The same type team, I'm just doing it. Okay. So here it is. I want to set up on all the host again. So become yes, I'm doing it. You know what is become yes basically. Likewise, team, in any other programming, we can define some variables. I'm just defining some variables just to explain that playbooks can be having a variable and you can use those variable across the playbooks again. So I'm defining a variables here just to make you understand about top level things. Now here team, I'm writing a set of tasks, what I have to do it on the target system. Now, as per the diagram team, in order to deploy our war file, basically, I said like we need to have an operating system, which is there already. We need to install Java, we need to install Tomcat, then you can copy your war file, right? That is what we're trying it. So just set up this one accordingly. Can a user become a user specific task? Yes, Amruta, you can do that also, right? So I can show you that example also if you want it. Just that you need to write a become yes on this particular user. Okay. Instead of this becomes the user root user for all the tasks, but if you would like to become a user for a specific task, then you can include here itself, right? Then like it's that only this become yes. If I write it here, basically only this particular task become a root user and rest everything will become a normal user again accordingly. You can simply go with that also accordingly. Okay. So both the ways are possible. You can make it global or you can make it for the single task also. Both the things are possible here. Okay. This is a script you can call it, Sahil. This is a script that you can call it. So it is not a job yet. You can schedule this with the cron job in your Linux so that it can run at a particular interval also. This is simple script using which you're trying to perform some changes. YAML scripts or YAML is can be called as Ansible playbooks can be called as Ansible scripts also for performing the task on your things accordingly. Okay. So this is when you need to schedule this job. When you think about a cron job, basically you set a cron service to run this automatically at a particular interval of time. We are not scheduling this. Cron job is like a scheduler, right? Cron is a scheduler basically to schedule a job. So here is a simple script. You have to execute it manually, or if you would like to schedule it, you can use a cron schedule again to schedule this one at a particular interval of time accordingly. Right, so this is how it is can be done. So let me walk through this one first of all, team. What exactly I'm doing is that here we are actually getting this Java 1.8 software, means that I'm using apt modules to install the Java, and I'm creating a user called as the Tomcat group called as Tomcat on my target system, and I'm also using a user called as Tomcat. And here, team, I'm trying to download the Tomcat. So we can copy the Tomcat software or we can download it. I am giving you the both scenarios here. Think about this. If you have a file on your machine, Tomcat tar file, a zip file, you can simply copy it. Right now we don't have that one with us. So let's say that I'm gonna comment out this one accordingly, right? This is what I'm doing because this file is not present on my system, team, but I'm trying to download using a URL, which is this one basically, but assume that this also need to be there again. Yes, you can do that also, Gopal. Everything is possible. Let's say that 8553 is the URL to have it. Let me validate if this is available or not. Let's say that go to Google, uh, download Tomcat. Download Tomcat is what I'm using it, right? Let's go to the Apache download page. Download 80. I think the current version is 8556 team, so we need to get the URL, right URL here. Here you can see that the binary distributions, I can get a URL for this star file, copy link address, and I'm going to replace this because 8553 would fail it because that is not available in the default things. What I'll do is I'm just going to make the changes to this one. I'm going to change the URL to use the latest one, which is 8556 version, right? And change the destination to this one also 8556. That is what all I'm doing it. Okay, now you're going to extract this tar file, team, which is what I'm using it. Tar shell is a module which I'm using to extract the tar file, and I'm also creating a symlink for this one. You need to have an idea about these things. Let's say that, and once this is done, basically we are creating a file, right? We are changing the permissions for the folder that we are creating right now. We're just changing that permissions need to be updated, changing the ownership of the file to Tomcat user. And here, team, we are trying to set up a Tomcat script. Basically, this is not available again on my system, so which is going to be failure. I will provide all these things also, but let me comment out this one first of all for this right now. So since the file is not available, I need to get that file from somewhere. So it is not available. So what I'll do is I'll simply comment out this task, which will not be executed. Commenting can be done with a hash thing in your things team. And the second thing is also, which is dependent on the task. So let's say that I'm going to comment out this also, because these are all not available team. And here we are trying to set this out. So this is also not possible. Service is not registered. So it's not going to put. Here it is. So I can use this command basically now to start up the commands accordingly. And if there are something variables which I'm trying to print it using this one. So these are all the tasks in which I'm trying to do it. Okay. It depends on your application requirement, Gautam. Depends whether you need a 6.0 permission or based on the security that you want to apply, whether the file is open for everybody or whether the file is open for your own setup. So it requires based on your system requirement only. That's what all you do. So here team, just to quickly recap again, we are installing Java. We're using a user called as Tomcat, group called as Tomcat, and we are downloading the Tomcat here, right? And we are also extracting the Tomcat. That is what we are doing it, and creating some symlinks under this one. Similarly, I'm changing the ownership of the files, whatever I'm doing it. So which requires minimum 755 to run it. And these things are not present on my system. So this is going to fail. So I'm just commenting out these things. And finally, I'm trying to start the Tomcat server using this command line. So, and finally, we are trying to print some variables accordingly. Now, this is all the task about team. This is a realistic playbook mostly, which we do it. Now let's execute this one. Ansible playbook -i etc Ansible host inventory file. I'm using it, and here I'm gonna execute the Tomcat. Let's see that it is going to set up team all the tasks on the target system or not. Okay, so there is some, see this team, this is an indentation problem basically. That is what it is telling you. So we can simply understand it. There is syntax errors in your YAML file. So let's open this one. There must be something called as indentation problem here. Let's look at this. Yep, the name must be here. So here it is, right? So we must change this one and do this. So it is good now. We are able to run it. Look at this one team. It is trying to install the Java right now on my target system. Install Java, install Tomcat, start the Tomcat. Everything can be done accordingly using this button. Installing Java may take a little bit time because it's a heavy thing. It downloads around 200 to 300 MB of software from the internet. It will try to download it and it will try to install it. So that's the reason it is taking some time. Let's see that if it is going to set up completely or not on all the target systems. Nothing but these are the target systems right now. Similarly, team, if you have 100 servers also, it would take the same time. Let's say that 5 to maximum 3 to 4 minutes it will take it to complete this task mostly. We will see that accordingly. Install Java 1.8. Okay, it is done now. It is taken care. You can see that group is created. Now the user is also created. We're going to validate all these things on the target systems. But now it is downloading the Tomcat. It is installing the Tomcat. Now you can see that it is started the Tomcat also successfully. Everything is being taken care of. It hardly took 2 minutes to complete the task, right? To install the Java Tomcat, setup user, setup group, and change the permissions, and finally start the Tomcat server also. Hardly took 2 minutes, right, for each all the servers together. So similarly, team, if I ask you to do the same thing, you may take a lot of time. But with configuration management tool, it is so easy for us. Let's say that validate here. Let me go to the root user. Let's say that Java -version. See that the Java is installed successfully, right? Now let's go to the OPT folder where we install the Tomcat. We can see that the Tomcat is installed. Tomcat symlink is created. Let's go to the Tomcat folder, right? Tomcat something, and you have everything. The permission got changed to the Tomcat user, means that you can validate the ID user is created, everything ID Tomcat. So Tomcat user is also created here successfully. The validation task, that's what I'm doing. Finally, it is started the Tomcat or not, we validated. ps-ef grep Tomcat. We can simply do it. Tomcat is a web server's help just to deploy your application, as I discussed on the day one. In order to host a server application basically, right? Let's say that you have a movie with you. Can you play the movie directly? You don't, right? You install a VLC media player to play the movie actually, right? So similarly, the var file, the application bundle that we developed already, the var file yesterday, if I want to run that application, I need to install something called as web server such as Tomcat, so that I can take that var file and deploy, install into this particular web server, so that I'll be able to access my application. That is what the correlation that you can do it accordingly. Okay, Tomcat is a web server in which we're going to deploy our application so that we can access our application accordingly. Okay, so here it is team, you can see that Tomcat is also running, right? If you want to access the Tomcat team, just like a Jenkins, Tomcat also runs on a port number called as 8080 by default. So let's say that I can use this IP address, any of this one. We're checking this one first of all. Let's go to the browser. Here it is, and say that 8080. You should be able to see that your Tomcat is launching. See that my Tomcat web server is available for me, Apache Tomcat. So in this one, I can simply deploy my var file or simply deploy my application, and then I can access my application accordingly. So this is what all you need to understand, guys. How do we set up our infrastructure? In order to install anything on the target system, use the configuration management tool to write the automation and execute it, so that it will take care of setting up your infrastructure. Whatever you want it across n number of machines can be taken care with a Ansible as a configuration management tool. Simply we go to it. Okay, so this is on the top level team, what exactly is Ansible and how exactly we use Ansible to perform some changes on the target system accordingly. So I hope you're all clear now what is Ansible and why do we need Ansible. So simply in simple words, again, in order to implement any change on the target system, we use configuration management tools, which helps us automate a series of instruction or tasks, write them and sit on one location and sit on the controller machine kind of a stuff and execute everything on the target systems. To perform any changes, simply use configuration management tool accordingly. For installation, uninstallation, whatever you want to do it, simply do it. Okay. How to change that IP address to some readable username? IP address to username, we never do that, right, Pamaleti? IP address to host name, you're talking about, maybe not the username. Host names, you can use it if the host names are resolvable. You can simply use the host names also. This is what you can use it. IPs and names are mapped, but IPs or username doesn't map basically. Okay. Great. So now this is what is called as your things team. Try to understand the things. Then you must use the load balancer, and then you must use the DNS servers formality. There is something called as DNS servers. You need to make sure that you have a DNS server. Then you register this 3 IP address to the DNS name, like such as facebook.com or google.com. You must use something called as DNS servers. DNS servers allows you to map a name or a DNS name to your IP address accordingly. So DNS means that domain name servers we call it, which allows us to map IP address to a name, and then you can use the names to resolve that particular IP address accordingly. Okay, try to read about the DNS names accordingly. Is it possible to install anything in the target system having different OS? Yes, you can have any target operating system in Gopal. It can be a Linux or Ubuntu, or it can be a Windows also. Target operating system can be anything. I can use Ansible to make the changes accordingly. How do we decide on what basis we make the machine controller? Just install. Not any conditions are met here to Gautam, so you don't need to decide on what things. Just take a machine, assume that you want to perform the changes. I need a controller machine. Take a machine with a minimum capacity and install Ansible. That's all. There is no specific condition that you can do it. Can we create instance itself using Ansible? Yes, you can do that, Sachin. We can create EC2 instances using Ansible also. That is possible. So simply on the top level, guys, we are trying to understand here just for a quick top level targets, just to quickly recap what we did so far. We learned Git to say where we understand that developer will save the source code onto the source code management tool. And using Jenkins or Maven, we generate a var file, basically nothing but your application is bundled together, right? Application is bundled as an executable file. So in order to deploy this executable file onto the target systems, so we need to have the environment ready, right? So in order to deploy my var file, I need a system or I need a machine which has Java installed. I need to have some kind of web server such as Tomcat is set up. so that we can simply take this var file and deploy into the target system accordingly. That is what all we are trying to do it, correct? Now, once you have this one team, let me show you that if I have a var file, I'll just simply show that. Maybe let me see that. I think in the labs team which I provided, there must be a var file available. So let me look at that. So how do I deploy application into the Tomcat? Something you can use it. Let's go to the Docker here and code. Okay, I have a var file here, team. Let me clone this repository. Like we prepared a var file yesterday. Let me quickly show that and we can jump onto the things. So on the controller or on the target machines, here I have the Tomcat ready already. So let's do this one, git clone, right? I can deploy through the Ansible also team, but I'm just saying that right now, just showing you on the right way. That's what I'm doing it. Let's say that du labs and Docker, and then the code here. Let's say that team, this is yesterday we generated some var file, right? I have some example var files here. Assume that if you have a var file ready, then how do you deploy this into the Tomcat server, right? That is the whole purpose of it, which you're trying to understand. Let's say that just with the deployment means that team, we need to copy this var file into a Tomcat location. Basically, that's what we do it. Let's say that cp sample up var file to a opt Tomcat, and web apps is a folder we copy it normally. So if you copy this file into this particular folder team, that means that we are successfully installing our application into the web server. That is what you can think about it. Let's say that we install successfully. Installation is this much only team. It will not be much. Basically, you can think about this. Right here it is. Now you copy it here. Opt Tomcat web apps. You can see that sample up var file is copied successfully. Now, once you deployed your application team, we can simply access our application using this one. Now, what is the server? This one is 36. Let me check the IP address of the 36 team. Is this my 36 server? This is not the one. So this is the one, right? So here it is. This is the 36 server. Yes. So I can use this IP address now to access my application. Let's say that here it is. 8080. Now it launches the Tomcat team when I access 8080. But if I want to access my application, there will be a context URL like used google.com, something like that. Sample app. I'll do it. If you see that my sample app application will be launching right now, this is a simple address book application where you can add the contacts or whatever the application that you have it, simply add the contacts and let's do this one. So let's enter some values here, right? And that's all I'm doing it. Finally, save the change, right? Now you can see that address book is added. I mean, this is my application team, just like you use a facebook.com or google.com. This is one of my application which we did it yesterday. The source code that we built it into a bundle yesterday, this is the application, which means that right now your understanding need to be like this. We have a var file now, we have deployed into the Tomcat server. This is what we did it. Once we deployed here, we will be able to use this application, whatever the intention of that application. Basically, we developed an application. If I want to use that application, I deploy into a server like this. Now I deployed here team, I test it here, I deploy in the queue, I test it here. Finally, let's say that we are delivering into the production. Now this is the end goal team. By doing this one, before we deploy this one, we need to have the Tomcat everything setup is ready. Now that is what we are using with the Ansible. Basically, Ansible as a configuration management tool which helps us prepare the environment need to be deployed for your application accordingly. Now that is what all about a team, about the Ansible that you need to have an understanding. So key takeaways is you need to understand that how do I prepare my infrastructure, or how do I make changes across my infrastructure sitting at one location when you have a huge number of servers. How can I perform the automation? Now Ansible is a configuration management tools which help us automate the entire infrastructure tasks. That is what the takeaway that you can take about it accordingly here. So this is what about the this one team. Basically we talk about it. How do we do this one? Configuration management. Basically this is simply called as a configuration management with Ansible. Now with this team, I'm going to stop with Ansible, right? So we can move on to the next tool accordingly, which is going to be talking about a containerization. That is also very, very important right now, right? Now, in order to understand the containerization, we need a minimum things, whatever we discussed so far. You understood now how exactly we deploy our application and how do we set up our infrastructure, right? That is it. But what exactly is a containerization, or the tool that we're going to discuss right now is that Docker. I'm not sure how many of you heard about the Docker so far, right? So Docker is still a tool team, or Docker is a software again. Call it as containerization tool. Containerization. containerization tool, we call it. Now, what exactly the containerization tool is? First of all, let's try to understand what is a container, right? What exactly is the container, team? You need to understand that. So think that, or you tell me what exactly is a container, maybe, then we can discuss the things accordingly, right? So whatever it is, team. So what is a container? First of all, you need to understand why do we need the container basically. That thing you need to understand, team. Let's discuss about some problems of deployment, right? Container is about deploying your application, team. Again, whenever I'm saying about deploying an application, deploying a software, right? Whatever we're doing it. As just now I told that here we build an application like this and we deploy or install this application into an environment like this, right? Various environments will be available like this. Now this is how I simply deploy my application without a container, right? Think that this is a scenario, how do I deliver or how do I deploy my application into various environments? This is called as without containers, right? Deploying an application or deploying the same war file, think about it. In order to deploy this war file, this is the approach I'm taking it. Without containers, this is what is the approach we normally do it, or we used to do it before the containers. Now in the market, team, containers are very famous. Containers are the way to host your application, we call it, or deploy your application, we call it. Now what exactly we are trying to do it, or what exactly is the architectural changes that you see it, the way you deploy the application into various environments, correct? Now that is what all you need to understand, team. So let's discuss about what exactly is a container. Before we understand the Docker is called as containerization tool. Docker lets us create containers or whatever it may be happens with Docker, that's okay. But let's try to understand first of all what exactly is a container and why do we need that. Now, in order to understand why do we need a container, first of all, let's try to understand the problems that we have it with the current way of delivering the application, right? This is nothing but delivering the application, right? Without this one, we are delivering this application, which we develop the source code into various environments. This is nothing but delivery part. So we are delivering our application into the production by deploying, before deploying into the production, we deploy into various environments to validate application is working as expected and to ensure that application will behave the same way whenever you deliver it to the end user also. Delivering end user is that we are delivering application into the production environment or deploying the application in the production environment. That is the final goal. Now team, think about it. As I told, like in order to deploy my war file, I am having a dependency of Java or Tomcat web server. Then only I can deploy my application to access my application accordingly. Think about this one, team. What could be the problem if I deliver this type of a method, or what are the betterments we are looking for here? Think about this, team. There would be a common problem. I'm not sure if you're aware of or not, but let me tell you the common problem in any organization people do is basically the developer is developing the application and developer is able to deploy the application in the developer environment wherever you see it. Let's say that this development machine is controlled by the developer itself. He is the one who uses this machine, so he is able to deploy Tomcat, he's able to run the Java, he's able to deploy the application into a development environment, and he tests the application in the development environment successfully, and he says that the application code is ready, you can take this one and ready and deliver it. Now let's say that the one who is deploying into the production, right? Let's say that developer tested in the development environment. He says everything is working fine. Now the way you deliver this application in the production team, the team who deploys into the production environment is a different team altogether, right? That team is called as operations team or a deployment team. We have it. Various teams are. Developer does not interfere in production. Developer duty ends at the development environment itself. Now after the development environment, there could be a team like different teams like operation teams, we call it normally. They take this one and then deploy into the production. Now what exactly the problem this one? Now let's say that developer said everything is working here. He gave me this war file, or we took this war file from where it is taking it out, working it out, and we deployed into the production. Now once we deployed into the production team, the application does not work. Now what could be the reason? What can be the reason here? The application does not works in production, but the same application code, if I deploy in the development environment, it works. Now what exactly is the differences you have it, or what exactly is the problem between the environments, right? Because developer machine is a separate machine and production machine is a separate machine altogether. That is the only difference that you find it on the top level. And we are taking only the application code here, right? Application code is a piece of code what is written by the developer. We deployed here and we deploying here. It works in dev, it does not work in production. Why is the problem here? Right now, this is where team people start blaming, right? This is called as a blame game. That is what I discussed in the day one also. Works fine in the production or works fine in the development, it's an ops problem or operation problem, because operation team is the one who is deploying it. Developer says that you are not able to deploy successfully, it is not working. The operation says that, operation people who deployed in the production, they say that it's your application is not working, this is your problem, go and fix it. So people start blaming each other here. That is the biggest problem that we have it in the current industry, or before we have these containers. Now that is what is one of the problem also with that, right? The DevOps says that you need to have a good collaboration in order to avoid the blame game. That is one of the goals of DevOps also. Think about it. Now, in order to resolve this problem, basically containers provides us a solution to that one. How do I deliver this application? Now, simple words team, why the application doesn't work is that, let's say that the development machine or developer machine is controlled by the developer most of the time. Let's say that he's the one who's testing it, or development environment is kind of a playground for us where we play with everything. Maybe we upgraded the software of Java to 1.8.11 or 1.11 something, or the Tomcat version maybe upgraded to 1.1. Let's say that 8 to 9 something has happened. But production environment team, it is not going to happen that way. So we have to go through a lot of approval process to upgrade everything. But the thing we upgrade in the development was not informed to the operation team. So application working on the development environment, because it has a right set of tool or right set of configuration basically in the development environment, is working. Now when I deliver the same application to the production is working on Java 1.8, right? So there mismatch between the versions of the Java, or there may be mismatch between the versions of the Tomcat, or maybe some dependencies required for your applications are present in the development environment which are missing to be copied onto the target system, nothing but the production servers. So there are a number of dependencies are there to run your application. But in order to run or this, we are just delivering only the application code, but we are not worried about the dependencies to run it, or dependencies are maintained separately in each and every environment. Now that is the problem team here. To get this problem, basically a blame game happens. Basically whenever you're delivering your application, you're just delivering your application code, but not all of its dependencies together, right? You are maintaining separately in each and every environment. Now that is the main problem basically, which is causing for the environment inconsistency that brings us the application does not work in the production, or maybe working in the development environment accordingly. Now, how do I resolve this problem? What could be the solution to ensure that the application works exactly the same way across the environments is a question. Now that is where team we discuss about the things accordingly. Think that the same flow I'm drawing it, but we're going to do it with a simple different way, right? Let's say that here I'm taking the same flow. We still follow the same flow here, but we say that here now with containers, what exactly is the change we do it, right? With containers, right? This is what I'm telling it. Now here team, in this environments right now, let's say that we still have the same set of environments, development and whatever it is you have it. Okay, development, QA environment, you have it, right? And you have your pre-prod and then production also. Let's say that this is your pre-prod, and finally you have your production environment, whatever this is, have it. Okay, let's say that this is my dev QA, right? And this is pre-prod, and finally we have the production environment. The target is always that we need to deliver our application into the production. That is what all we need to do it. Now here team, earlier we are taking only the war file and delivering it, but the containerization tells that containerize the application code into an executable format. Means that just like we took a number of source code file into bundle into a single war file, single executable file. Now similarly, in order to run the war file, whatever the necessary things, package them again. So what exactly I'm telling is that team, the dependencies that are need to be run, right? Let's say that this is the package I want to create it. Let's say that in this package I want to have it, right? Let's say that this is, here it is, right? Now team, let's assume that in order to run the war file, the target is to run the war file team. This is what it is. Let's say that I'll reduce the font size a little bit. Okay, so this is my application team, and in order to run this application, I need a dependency of Tomcat and Java, and the OS also sometimes matters team here. Try to understand. So OS also matters sometime, and there can be some kind of dependencies also maybe there, like the property files you copy it, have it, same thing, anything. So let's kind of dependency property files, or some library files that you have it. So all the things which are necessary to run my application in the sense team, that's a var file only, the piece of code that you developed it. In order to run that particular application, there are n number of dependencies are there, and these dependencies need to be packaged all together into a single file. Now this is packaged, this thing is called as a container team. Try to understand that this simple package now is called as container, right? Now, instead of delivering only the war file, or instead of deploying only the war file into various environments, right? Instead of deploying only the war file or a piece of code into the various environment, deploy this whole unit, right? Take this file and then place it in the development environment. If it is working fine here, I deliver it here, right? If it is working here, I deliver it to the production. And if it is working here, I deliver it to my production environment also. In this case, team, you tell me now, if my application works in the development, will it work in the production or not, right? Making sense, everybody? So if this application works in the development environment, because we have all the application plus all of its dependencies packaged together, and we are delivering the whole package for running your application, we deploying this one. If this is the one which you're doing it, this is what all we do it like this, right? Now this is where team you can talk about, this is called as simply a container, which is having an application plus all of its dependencies together to deploy it ready. That is what is something we call it as a container in simple words. Container is simple words team. It is nothing but an application plus all of its dependencies packaged together to deliver it to the end user. That is simply we call it as a container, and the way we run it. Now, how do I prepare this team? Let's say that in order to prepare the war file, we used a tool called as Maven, right? Maven was a tool to prepare a war file, like bundle the code into a single executable file. Now, how do I bundle all this code into a single file again, right? Now, this is where team we need a tool again. That tool is called as Docker. Okay, that tool is called as Docker basically. So you must have a server to create this one. Let's say that Docker is a tool, simply we call it, to run this one. In order to run the Docker software team, I must have it operating system on the machine again. Try to understand this. Let's say that if I want to play a movie, first of all you have Windows operating system, then you install VLC media player, then you can play the movie, right? Similarly here also, in order to install the Docker, we must have an operating system. So we take a machine with an operating system, we install the Docker software, Docker tool basically, and once this tool is available, this tool helped me to create this package. Also it helped me to run the package accordingly. Okay, that is what all we doing it. Similarly team, on every machine we must have this one right now. Across the servers, across the environment, we install only these two things, nothing else apart from this one. No Java, no no Tomcat separately on every machine. Entire thing will commit as a bundle from the image container itself. Now once this is available team, now Docker is the one basically which lets us prepare this package and run this package accordingly, right? That is what all I'm doing it. So I can deliver this one here. Preparing also will use the same thing, and delivering, running also we use the same thing here. So Docker is called as a containerization tool, which helps us prepare the container and deliver the container into various environments and run it as a container. Now this technical terminology team, if you try to understand, now this package is technically we call it as Docker image. Okay, Docker image we call it. When you run the Docker image, right? When you run the Docker image, right, it becomes a container. What exactly is the difference between your, the image and a container? If you think about it, can somebody tell me what exactly is the difference between an image and a container? Yes, everybody. They both look same, right? They both look same team. Okay, try to understand. They both look same. So this is called as Docker container, right? And this is called as image. But I say that run is a keyword in between. You run the image, a runtime instance of an image is called as a container in simple words. So each environment Docker installation is must. That's absolutely right. Docker installation is must formulating. Yes, Docker installation must be there. Then only you can run the containers on that environment accordingly. You must prepare an image in the development environment. Let's say that in the development machine now I'm using Docker installation to prepare the image and also to run the image acrossly. And we deliver the image across multiple systems to run it as a container. So here team, first of all, let's try to understand the difference between an image and a container. Then we can go and discuss the rest of the, but let's try to understand what exactly is the difference between your image and a container. If you look at the diagram team, which I have drawn it, so you can see the same content, right? Image has the same content and run the container also has the same content, but what exactly is the difference between these two, right? Here it is team. So first of all, image is a static format basically. Let's say that, let me take an example, right? You have a car. Let's say that, assume that you own a car basically. Now let's say that you parked your car in a shed, right? And then that is nothing but we call it as an image, right? Let's say that parked car is doing nothing. It is simply sitting idle, doing nothing there. That is nothing but a parked car. Similar to that is called as an image. Now, once you have that team, whenever you want to use the car and you take onto the road, you start the engine and you start moving the car. That's when, what is the difference now? What is the difference between a parking car and a running car, right? In the running car, basically the engine is started, right? And then you start consuming the resources like petrol, everything. And the purpose is resolved. You are moving the car to the different destinations accordingly, right? Now, that is the difference between your parked car and a running car. So compare the same thing with the image and a container. Image is something, just a file that sits on your machine doing nothing, idle thing, that is nothing there. The Tomcat is not started or something is there. Now when you run that image, or let's say that I start the engine, now then I can use the car to move it, right? Similarly, when I start or when I run the image as a container is nothing but a runtime instance where the Tomcat is started, application is loaded. Now I can access my application accordingly, right? Now that is the difference between your image and a container team. Image is a static form and a container is a running form. The content is exactly the same thing in both the things, but try to understand that image is something, a static form where application cannot be accessible or Tomcat is not in a running state. Once you install something, we have to start it actually. That is where we call it as a container. So when you run the image into a container, the Tomcat starts, application loads into it. I can access my application and start sending a request or whatever you want to do, you do it accordingly. Now this is what is the difference between an image and a container team. Now that is where Docker works on a flow or a slogan called as build, right, and ship and run, right? Let's say that build the image first of all and ship it into various environment and run it as a container. When you run it, you solve the purpose of accessing your application. That's all about it. Now this is where team Docker comes into the picture. Docker runs on this particular flow. Now most of you are confusing why Docker and Ansible both required. Configuration was taken care by Ansible. After that, only application to be taken care. Or let's say that inlight into the Ansible versus Docker, it seems Docker does somewhat Ansible does it. No, not exactly. Docker does not do what Ansible do it. Let me tell you very clearly, right? Here in this case also, let's say that I need to prepare an infrastructure of 500 servers where I need to install the Docker, right? Think about that. Think about a change to the server basically. I want to install the Docker across 500 servers. Can you use Docker to install the Docker? No, right? We cannot use that one basically. So here we still require Ansible to set up the infrastructure first of all. Across 500 servers, I need to install my Docker software. I can use Ansible to install the Docker. Once the Docker is installed on it, I can use the Docker again to run the containers, right? That is what we do. So that is the main difference between your Ansible. Ansible help you to make configuration changes, install something. Docker is only to run the containers, nothing else apart from that, right? Apart from running the containers on a system, you do a lot of changes, right? About creating a files, uninstalling something, installing something else apart from the Docker, right? Using Ansible, you can run the Docker containers again. That's a different case. Ansible can be used as a deployment tool to this one. So that is the difference, right? So the Ansible is used to prepare all the changes or make any changes to the system. Basically, system is that a machine with having an operating system. I can make any change on that particular system. That is why we use the Ansible. But whereas Docker help you to run only your application containers, nothing else apart from that, right? Docker is used only to run it is not installing anything. We preparing image, it is just running the containers accordingly. That's all about it. That is the main difference between your Ansible and the Docker. You can understand it accordingly. Okay. I hope everybody is clear. So a runtime entirely of image is a container. So we could create multiple containers from the single image. That's absolutely correct, Pamaleti. Like you have a car blueprint, right? Like when you are designing a car, you create a blueprint. Basically image is like a blueprint here, that's it. So when you have a blueprint of a car, you can produce as many cars as you want, right? As a car industry or manufacturer, what they are doing it, they have one design. Using one design itself, they are producing many cars, right? If you take any example, the first design, you get a number of cars. Similarly, you have an image, it's like a blueprint from which you can create as many containers as you want it. Every container is nothing but application instance, so that I can access my application accordingly from each instance, whatever it is running it. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Now what exactly is Docker and why do we use Docker here? Any questions? Anybody have any questions, team, here? Okay, great. So this is about the containerization, team, basically. So here, in to avoid a lot of troubles that we have it with the container, before the containers, maintaining the things across the different servers or different things. Earlier, in every server, Tomcat need to be installed separately. All those things need to be maintained separately. With containerization, we are simply preparing a bundle. We're just deploying the bundle. So the maintenance part is becomes a very minimal with the Docker containers. That is what you can think about it. And rest everything also becomes easier for to run the containers accordingly. And containers can be easily running, right? Containers can be scaled up easily, scaled down easily. Means that number of containers can be created easily. When I have a blueprint, it is easy for me to create it. So there are various advantages that comes with your containerization automatically. So we can't do it wrong. So can't we reduce the Docker installations in a single environment? Answer and share to all. Sorry, what is that? Can't we reduce the Docker installation in a single environment and shareable to all? No, right? So environment is always together different, right? So you have, how do I tell it, right? Environment is specific, right? You have to install Ansible Docker across all the environments for sure. Without, we cannot share the same environment for multiple purposes, right? It is not possible. Basically, that is not the case. We cannot do that. Okay. Now team, here we need to understand about how do we install the Docker and how do we start working with containers. That is not what we're going to do it. So we need to understand about how to run a container if I have an image. First of all, that is also we need to understand. So just to give you the overview, team, here what exactly we're going to proceed further. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow we'll do it, but this is what I'm telling it. So we're going to understand about how to run containers from an image, right? From an image, if you have an image already, then how to prepare our own images, right? Our own images, right? This is what we're going to do. Then we can see the next challenges accordingly. How to run multiple containers in a single go, how to work with multiple containers accordingly. We are going to do it. So every prod environment, now it's just maybe Ambit. I'm sorry, just give me a second, guys. Just carrying a OS which is going to run on a machine which is already having OS. That's correct, Sachin. Docker, a container carries an operating system library, we call it. It needed because your application may need some kind of operating system library dependencies. Yes, your image, a Docker image carries an operating system and which runs on top of an operating system again. That's all will be taken care by the Docker accordingly. Your understanding is correct, so don't worry about it. It's not your doubt. Everybody gets that doubt. So every prod deployment with container, we will install Java and Tomcat and prod server. Won't it impact the already running application? Richa, we don't install, right? We are preparing an image, right? Let's say that there is an image already having a version 1. Let's say that you prepared an image with version 1, that right? That is what you did it. And whenever you deploying the next version, basically we replace the entire stack again, right? We're going to replace the entire image with the second image account. So we're going to remove the existing containers and we're going to redeploy the existing or new image or new version actually. So with every version of the deployment, we prepare a new image. with every version of the image, we're going to prepare a new image to it which has everything in it again. So we're not going to deploy just the application again, we're going to replace everything, right? That is what we're trying to do with the containers. So the purpose of preparing an image is to deploy the containers. Why do we deploy only the application again once it is running it? So we simply replace the whole stack again. We remove the older containers, we redeploy the old newer containers, which is from the new image again. So you not get any problem with it accordingly, right? Existing application will be removed and we do it accordingly. What if the Docker version is different environments? Is that image going to work the same? Absolutely, it is going to work permanently, but until unless if your Docker is creating some mess up, because Docker engine version need to be maintained across the same servers again, same thing. That maintenance will be taken care again. That is a minimal maintenance when it compared to the previous things. It is going to be a minimal maintenance accordingly. Okay, so this is what we can think about it. How the Docker helps for QA team and continuous integration. See here, the QA engineer is, if you are a QA engineer, if you're writing about automation test cases, it is not your cup of tea basically. It is for the deployment strategy. Basically, we are changing it, the way you host the application. Maybe you deploy, the deployments of the application becomes faster. That's all you're going to do it. For continuous integration, there is no piece in the continuation for testing, right? Once after you have var file is generated, we deploy the thing. Once after deploying it, there is no QA is not involved anywhere in the deployment here, right? QA test is that QA job is to test it, just the application. That's all it is going to do, nothing else apart from that. Means that instead of hosting the application directly on a VM earlier, now we are hosting in a containers accordingly. Okay, that is what all we are trying to do it. So does the Docker take care of version? That is, if needed, it will be able to downgrade a software, as some of the softwares once upgraded can't be downgraded. See, Sachin, we are preparing an image, right? Let's say that there was an image prepared with the older version, let's say the Tomcat 7 and Java 1.7, which we did it. That image will be available as it is, right? When you want to upgrade to the next version, we prepare a separate image altogether, right? The image is already there as it is. We prepare a new image with the Java 1.8 and Tomcat 8, whatever it means. So you have the copies of different versions. If I want to roll back it, I simply deploy the older version of the image to a container. So I'll have the backups accordingly, so I can deploy them accordingly. Okay, it is not downgrading the softwares. We are not going to downgrade it. We are not going to upgrade them. We prepare an image which has a stack apparently, whatever it is needed. So we just save that images accordingly. Whenever you want to downgrade to application version or Tomcat version, we can simply use the previous version of the image, deploy it again. That's how you do it accordingly. Test automation, CI/CD, and then what are the other topics? These are the important topics in a DevOps world. As a DevOps engineer, if you're trying to do it, Ansible, Docker are the very, very important tools that you need to understand it, how they can be used in your CI/CD pipelines. Actually, using these tools only, people are trying to implement the CI/CD. It will become easy to implement CI/CD if you're using these tools. You can still implement the older tools also, but that's going to be a little tougher job. People are converting the tools into lighter weight tools such as containers, which helps us deliver the application faster. That's all about it, Tamim. So you must understand about how Docker works, how Ansible helps us to deliver the things accordingly. All those things can to be understood. Important topics are Ansible and the Docker, and then also the Kubernetes that will be there accordingly. Okay. So this is all. Let's take a server team, and I'm going to take a server and I'm going to install the Docker right now. As I said, like, we need to understand how to run the containers. If I have an image ready, right? Let's say that there are images available, team. If you have some time, please go through something called as Docker Hub. There's a place called as hub.docker.com. Just like your Google, basically, there is something called as hub.docker.com where you find the predefined images. We can simply use these images to start working on it. Okay, let's say that I want a Tomcat image. I can simply look for a Tomcat image. I mean, this Tomcat image team, which will already have the OS installed in Java installed and Tomcat installed already, we can simply use the Tomcat image to run the Tomcat server accordingly. That is the simplest way of doing the things, right? So you have the images ready, and you can simply prepare our own images also. There are many public images available in the Docker Hub. We can use those images to run the containers, or we can prepare our own images also to put our own stack, whatever the operating system I wanted, whatever the Java I wanted, whatever I wanted. We're going to use all these things accordingly. So this is what it is, hub.docker.com. is a place where you find the predefined images. We're going to learn how to run the containers from the existing images first of all. Once the images are running successfully, right? Once we understand how to run a container from an existing image, we're gonna work on preparing our own images also. Then we're gonna work on the rest of the stuff. That is what all about a team. So today I'll walk you through how to install the Docker, and then tomorrow we're gonna start running the containers accordingly. But let's walk through the installation of the Docker right now. So take a machine team, any machine that you have it. Let's say that this is the machine I want to install a Docker right now. Let's say that here. Let's say create another EC2 instance team, maybe separate EC2 instance, take a EC2 instance, a fresh EC2 instance, and start installing the Docker. That's all we're gonna do it. So let's say that docker-v, there is no Docker installed here. In order to install the Docker, let's clone our labs, which I did it, git clone, right? Whatever it is, HTTPS, right? github.com, github.com, and then lead DevOps, whatever I gave it, and then DU labs, right? I'm just cloning this team. Let me finish the installation. I'll take your questions again. So go to the DU labs folder. So go to the Docker folder here. You have it. And under the Docker folder team, there is an install folder available. Inside this one, you have something called as install Docker manual instruction team. You can follow the manual instruction if you would like to. I have mentioned clearly the install Docker on Ubuntu instruction. You can validate these commands, or you can follow the instruction here to this one. You can do through Ansible also, Sachin. You must write a playbook, just like you wrote a playbook for the installation of Tomcat. Similarly, you can write a playbook for installing the Docker also. Similarly, you can write it up. Yes, we can do it with the Ansible, definitely. You can do manually, or you can do something that also that is possible. Okay. So let's say that I'm going to run this install Docker script team, chmod 755 install docker.sh. and install docker.sh. I'm simply running it. The scripts are available inside the Docker Hub, so GitHub, which I've shared with you guys. Please go through them. And I also mentioned the Docker details, what exactly is Docker and all that stuff. So go through the things accordingly. DU Labs and Docker. So you can read about the Docker accordingly, and then we'll come back to the things. Okay. Just to show you that we are installing the Docker here. Once the Docker is installed, team, I'll quickly show you how quick it is to run a Tomcat server, or let's say that how quick it is to run some kind of Nginx or Apache web server accordingly. We can do that accordingly. Okay. What is the difference between Ansible and other config management tools like Chef and Puppet? Should these also be understood to be more competent? Gautam, I see that to be competent, yes, you need to understand them, but there are major architectural changes will be available between the other configurations such as Puppet and then Chef type of stuff. Definitely, Ansible is one of the best tools in the market right now, which is agentless architecture, and it is a push model. When you go for other configuration management such as Puppet and then Chef, they are agent-based architecture, means that you need to install agent on the target system. Along with that, they are called as pull model. There are major changes like that will be available. The way they implement the changes are a little bit different, that you need to understand them accordingly. Okay. So we have installed Docker software successfully team right now. Just to validate that, you can run a command called as Docker version, right? It will show you the Docker version. Basically, see that there is a simple version available, Docker engine version and everything. So this is how you can simply understand about installation of Docker. And once the Docker installation is available, right? Once it is done, we can start running our containers, right? First of all, team, just to show you, I'm not gonna tell the bit, we're gonna discuss tomorrow mostly, but here I'm just gonna show you quickly how to run a container. Let's say that Docker run is a command to create a container from a image, basically. Docker run -d and then -p I'm using. We're gonna explain all these commands tomorrow, team, but I'm just saying that Nginx is something I want to run it, right? Nginx is a web server, team, just like your Apache Tomcat is a web server. Similarly, Nginx is another web server in which also we can deploy our applications, basically. Now you can see that I did not install anything, but I just ran a container. Within a seconds, basically, my server is available. Let's say that 32768 is a port number. I can access it to access my web server. Which system we installed it? Let me check the system team here, which is 64. Is this the one? Okay, this is the system team. This is the system, I believe. Okay, this is the one. So let me copy the IP address of this machine. Here it is. I'm going to use this. The port number is 32768. Siddharth, welcome to Nginx. The Nginx is available, team. If I ask you to install the Nginx, you may take all the instructions and take some time to install everything. Here, once the image is available, you need not to worry about how to install Nginx, how to install everything. Nothing is like that. Just the image prepared, you just run the image, that will be ready, and then you can start using your application accordingly, right? So that's how you need to understand about the things. Images are very simple. Docker containers are very simple. Once the image is available, we can run the container, we can simply access the web server within seconds, right? Earlier, if I want to install the Tomcat team, I wrote a playbook, right? I wrote instruction to install the Jenkins, install the Java, install the Tomcat. Then I started the Tomcat. I took care of everything, each step by step. In this case, did we install the Nginx? Nothing, right? We just took the image from the Docker Hub and we started running it. So Nginx is available within 2 seconds for me when compared to the Tomcat installation earlier. Similarly, I can run a Tomcat image also here, which will be available for me in 2 seconds, or with a single command, I can run my Tomcat. Right? Let's say that docker run -d and then -p Tomcat. Tomcat is an image again, which comes up from the Docker Hub simply. I can simply download this and run it within minutes. I don't need to worry about what are the installation instructions for Java, or installation instruction for Tomcat. Nothing need to be worried. Just download it or download the image and start running it. It is going to be taken care easily. Right? So here it is, Docker PS. See that my Tomcat is also up and running now within seconds, and I can access my 32769. Right? Here it is. You have the Tomcat response. There is a 404 response that should be okay for it, but there is something Tomcat is responding to you, right? So this is how team you can understand about quickly running the containers about the accordingly. So here it is. Great. How much do we need to know about the DevOps, about test automation? I think I already explained that the name. I told you that, as a test automation is nothing here. As a DevOps engineer, you need to have a wider scope to learning the Ansible and Docker accordingly. That's what that Docker important topics are: Docker and Ansible and Kubernetes. These are the very important things. Could you please recap? So as I told again, today we discussed about a configuration management tool, how to run the how to make the changes on the target systems by using Ansible as a configuration management tool. And we understood various things about Ansible, Ansible architecture, Ansible ad hoc commands, Ansible playbooks, how to run them accordingly. Everything we understood it. And later we started discussing about the containers. Why containers? What are containers? How does Docker is helping us preparing these one accordingly? All these things we discussed it so far. Tomorrow we're going to plan to run the containers, run the containers and prepare our own images. That's all we're going to do it. And later we will work on how to run the containers in a production grade scenario using Kubernetes also. We're going to look at it accordingly. That's the plan for tomorrow, team. I request everybody, if you have some time, read about something on the Kubernetes, what exactly is Kubernetes, the things, and why do we need the Kubernetes. We discuss anyway tomorrow, but that's all about it. Okay, so I'll stop here for today. If you have any questions still, let us know. It's open for questions now. We can discuss the rest things tomorrow. Image container like class object, exactly you can think about, Priya, like the class, the object is an instantiation of a class basically. Similarly, image can be class and container is instance of an object, instance of an image that you can think about it. Exactly, your understanding is absolutely correct, Priya. Okay. Yes, any other questions we have it? Okay, so team, if you do not have any questions, then we can wind up the session here, and I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day ahead or great evening ahead. Take care. Okay. Okay, still I don't see anything, so Okay, guys, thank you so much then. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.